Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube and listening, if you're listening to the podcast, I have another special guest today. He is Nick, also known on Instagram as Boston Card Hunter. I first noticed Nick on Instagram probably a few months ago. He started posting a bunch of his signed vintage basketball stuff. He has some really awesome vintage signed sets that I'll let him talk about here in just a second. But I definitely wanted to reach out to him and talk to him. So I'm really glad he had the time to do this interview today. So, Nick, first of all, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And so before we get into your signed sets that you're doing right now, how did you get started in the hobby? Well, how long you been doing this, and what was it that kind of really got you into it in the first place?
It's funny. There's like two phases to this. There's phase one when I was a kid
Hmm.
in the junk wax era, and I had this awesome fifth grade teacher, and one of our assignments was to write to some of our players and see if we can get their autographs. This is back in the '80s when it was pretty effective. I think I wrote to like Ryan Sandberg, a few Red Sox players, and they all like wrote back and signed the cards. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then in high school, I did it again a little bit. I got like Karl Malone and a couple of guys, but didn't really collect much until I would say COVID hit, and I kind of got bored, and I just started thinking like, wow, this might be something fun to do with like reaching out to the teams and everything like that. And then in terms of vintage, the catalyst to it's crazy. I ended up trading a rookie, Kareem 69 card for a PSA 7 MJ 86 that ended up being counterfeit. And so I went back to the guy and said, "Hey, this is fake. Like, who sold this to you?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, my buddy did. I'll make it right. I'll send you a full 86 Fleer raw set without the Jordan." And so I got this raw set. And I'm like, "What on earth do I do with this thing?" And I'm like, "Well, I know how to get Kareem's autograph. Can I get like 10 of them or like 20 of them?" And then I started actually diving in and figuring out that I could probably get like half of these guys for free, or close to free, get another quarter through signings, and then, purchase the rest and all that. And so then it really took off. And yeah, I was able to finish the set pretty quickly. It's crazy.
Wow. Well, first of all, that was a really cool assignment by your teacher. Definitely. I would have loved to
It
have
was
that
awesome.
assignment when I was a kid. Yeah. So that was definitely one of the sets I was obviously referring to. So, you have now, if I'm not mistaken, completed a full set of 86 Fleer autographs, correct?
Correct. Yep. All of them in Sharpie except for the two MJs. So it's the full set plus stickers.
Hmm.
I took it one step further, and I think I have 25 checklists signed. All the living referees from that year, except for one, I can't find him, um, have signed a checklist for me. Plus some things like the Lakers owner Jeannie Buss, or the Chicago Bulls owner. He wrote on one, "Glad we drafted MJ," which is like my favorite one. So I've got that full set now. And I'm actually crossing everything to PSA. So I'll have it all in PSA new label, dual graded, within a few months.
Well, that's fantastic. So, how long roughly would you say it took you to complete that set?
That was kind of crazy. I got that first Kareem auto in like February 22.
Hmm.
And I think by July I had completed it. I got the
Wow.
MJ number 57 at auction because it's I guess I'm one of those guys. If I decide to do something, I do it. So I got everything I could, and then I dove into a lot of the groups where these guys have these cards, um, and obviously the deceased players. I had to purchase those. I just bought those up pretty quickly because I had a feeling things were going to rise, and I was right. And then there were a few really tough players where I pulled it off. It was crazy. It went fast, and then that's why I started this other set because I felt like the fun was over when I finished it.
Yeah, that was incredibly fast. Congratulations on completing it in that short of a time frame. Um, Yeah. So, what are your thoughts about um, the rise in popularity of that particular set, uh, the autograph set in particular for 86 Fleer? Because I certainly have been noticing it myself. The rise in popularity seems like in terms of people going after that set signed. Yeah, what do you think? Kind of what do you think, in your opinion, kind of started that, and what is the time frame when that started?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at vintage overall, you can see, you know, a 50x like in 10 years, how it was like 10 years ago. And even just like 6 years ago, it's probably 10x. And I just think like vintage overall has gone up. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, right? Like there's an element of it as an asset class where it's a scarce asset there's not more of them being made, like gold or waterfront property or art or something like that. So that's one element to it. I think the other is that the people who enjoyed those cards are now older and have more disposable income. And they're like, I had these cards when I was a kid and I'd like to have them again. And maybe I could have them signed or something like that. And I think we kind of enter the hobby as we age. I think COVID kind of sparked things too. Obviously, like we were all sort of bored and like rethinking our lives, and looking for things that made us happy. So there's probably an element there. And I think 86, for that set specifically, it's just so iconic, right? It's you look at that from 10 feet away, the set like right away. Like in any showcase at a show, you can spot the 86 Fleer the second you turn the corner and look at the case. And it's got MJ and probably his best card, dunking. And it's chock full of, 20 Hall of Fame rookie cards, just because of the timing of the set and everything.
Right.
And I think that's part of it too. And it's a relatively, it's only 131 cards. It's not 200 or 250 like the modern sets. But yeah, it has been interesting to watch. And even between last year and this year, I've noticed like the auto set hunters have increased. And it was kind of like my spidey sense. I had a feeling I was onto something and I needed to get it done fast, and that was part of the reason. Like I did it so quickly, get ahead of everybody.
Yeah, and and I sort of made that commitment to getting 61 Fleer signed, as many as I possibly could, as fast as I possibly could, for a lot of the same reasons. I'm still nowhere near complete. That's just it's I think a little bit more of a tougher task, especially in terms of finances.
Quite expensive, yeah. Quite
Yeah,
expensive.
and many more people that have been deceased for many more years than from the 86 Fleer set. So yeah, I absolutely obviously agree with you. I just wanted to get your opinion on it, and I know you talk obviously a lot to the 86 Fleer community people, and don't know if they have a lot of thoughts about just the increase in popularity of a lot of those signed cards, especially.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if we'll know the exact answer. I can just make guesses at what's
Mhm.
happening from a macro perspective. Um, but it is interesting to watch, and it's definitely real. The increase in interest in the set, and especially the signed stuff. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And then in terms of some of the really rare ones, what were some of the most difficult? Were there really? I mean, obviously, it didn't sound like it was too difficult for you. You got it done in like 4 months. But what were some of the ones though that
It's harder than yeah.
for
I'm not
people
a
who
great
do
example because I
that?
attack it, but um, there's two types of difficulty.
Yeah,
It's kind of like for your 61, right? You've got your like Wilt Chamberlain base. That's difficult because it's expensive,
right.
right? Or so for the 86 Fleer, the MJ, you see one or two a year pop up, but they're pricey. So it's just a matter of money for that one in particular. So I would say it's difficult because you need to be able to afford that. Now, the deceased players is a whole different story. I mean, you have to network everywhere, every forum you can think of, every collector you've ever known. And even then, it's going to be hard. What I call the Holy Trinity. It's Mike Mitchell, Dan Roundfeld, and Derek Smith. They are just They're the three toughest cards by far. Derek Smith died in 1996. Dan Raumfeld retired the year after this came out. So it was really just TTM that people were getting them. That's how I got mine, a guy who TTM'd him, and thankfully it passed. And Mike Mitchell's pretty similar story. Like he's difficult as well. I mean, all of them are to some extent the deceased players, but those three are just if you talk to the set collectors and they say they're down to 5 or they're down to 7, it always includes those 3. Always. Yeah. There's only so many. I mean, the pop report for Derek Smith is, I don't know, 11, 13. And it's like, how many of his cards signed do you think exist on the planet in attics and stuff? Like 25? Yeah, 30 maybe? That's a pretty finite supply. So, and I know a guy with 2, and then he'll never move them. So it's pretty interesting to watch. It's just like I said before, I was attracted to this obviously because of like my childhood in collecting, but it's a scarce asset that's valuable.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I know there are probably a lot of people out there that are probably thinking themselves, guys like Manute Bol, Wayman Tisdale, Dennis Johnson, and those guys are certainly scarce. But those guys you mentioned, once again, it's kind of similar to 61 Fleer. Like it's interesting to kind of learn about the nuances and which guys are truly rare, truly hard to find. It's not always the guys you probably think of at the top of your head, like. It's like, obviously, like a guy like Will Chamberlain's really rare in 61 Fleer, but there are quite a few other guys that's much more difficult to find, and there are a lot of reasons and nuances as to why that is, and it's really fascinating to kind of go down that rabbit hole and learn about those reasons for a lot of these really scarce players from these sets. And I agree. I think as the years go along and more people try and complete these sets, that they will just be some of the hottest commodities that you can find in the collecting world, really,
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I was in such a rush. Now it's very hard. Although the irony is I probably did go too fast because there are a few that were very hard last year, like Kiki Vandeweghe. He got burned on a deal to sign these cards, and so they were going for thousands of dollars. And then he just did a public signing like 3 months ago. Same thing with Benjamin, Benoit Benjamin. He did the same thing with him.
Yeah.
Yep. And like if I had slowed down a little bit, I probably would have saved some money on some of those instead of rushing and buying them. It's crazy. Like I got John Bagley TTM, for free, and I was so thankful. And then he just did a signing for like $10, like out of nowhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is the risk you run with collecting players that are still alive with some of these sets. Patrick Ewing is a great example because for the longest time his A6 Fleer was easily like around $1,000, just because it was kind of perceived that they're pretty scarce, and it was known for a long time that he didn't sign very much. Until recently, it feels like he's had a couple of big signings recently, and now
2 signings.
Yeah, and there's been hundreds of his A6 Fleer that have come on the market since then, and so they've gone down in price obviously since then because of that, and that's the risk you run because you don't know if those players will start signing again. Then all of a sudden they just make decisions like, okay, I'll go ahead and do a couple private signings, and then people come out of the floodgates and ask them to sign about 100 of their most popular cards, and then that just that just
exactly
brings the market down at the very least, But
Steve Johnson's another perfect example. He's got the error card where it's not a picture of him, so he's just never signed that card. But if he ever decides to, to do a signing, it's over. The value of that card will decline.
Yeah, because that's the only reason why it is valuable is because he didn't sign them, right?
Exactly. You're safe with the deceased players unless you have like a gypsy and an Ouija board or something. But the living ones, there's always that risk.
Yeah. So you completed the 86 Fleer set, and then as we were talking about before we hit record, then you started focusing on another vintage set. What is that set that you started focusing on after 86 Fleer?
Well, I wanted a challenge because 86 Fleer was like so fast for me. So I thought the 1969 tall boy set, the NBA tops, obviously would be a decent enough challenge because I think like half of them are deceased,
Mhm.
and they're getting up there in years, the ones that are alive, and I just thought it'd be fun, so I attacked it.
Yes, well, that is I know that set is quite a challenge, of course. Yeah, so that's a 99 card set, and I believe you've already got
Mhm.
91 of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, yeah, I've got 91 done, one easy one left, and then 7 hard ones. I decided to get the checklist signed by Kareem, and I had him write number 1 draft pick. I couldn't really think of anything else for the checklist. Um, so that's your 99th card or whatever. But yeah, I'm down to just 7 really.
Yeah. 7 with 6. Well, yeah, 7 with the really tough ones. Yeah. Well, what are some of the
Yeah,
really
yeah,
tough
yeah.
69 ones for people who don't really know?
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously, some of the tougher ones that are more pricey are like the Will Chamberlain. That's
Well,
tough. You kind of got to buy that at auction or whatever. Um, the the easier ones are kind of like your classic like TTM guys. There's probably 20 or 25 that you can rely upon, and I got those back very quickly. If you can see on my Instagram. And then you run into a wall where there's just so many deceased players.
yeah.
Um, Thankfully, I've had a lot of great connections in this set as well. Like Brian Oakley, Historic Hoopla, he's been awesome. He has the full set,
Mhm.
and he sold me many, many duplicates. Without those, I don't know where I would be, to be honest. And then the really tough one is Guy Rogers. He's probably the hardest. I've sourced a few of those, but a lot of the stuff back then, that's the other challenge. It was secretarial. There'd be a secretary in the locker room just signing the cards. And, you buy these raw from an old collector. It's just a crapshoot, so it's tricky. So Guy Rogers is tough. Bill Bridges, Happy Hairston, Ron Williams, a couple others that I need. Adrian Smith's the last. He's not too hard. He's still alive, um, but yeah, there are a few doozies.
Yeah, and yeah, Wilt's the Wilt's autographs. You have to always be real careful because he was definitely known. If you send something to him or send something to like the Lakers to have it signed by him, it was almost always secretarial signed
Yep.
at that point. So yeah, that's another thing you got to be real careful about with collecting the vintage stuff, the 60s and 70s stuff in particular. Is that you're right? It was just
Hmm.
a lot of people didn't know what to do back then because there wasn't like a database that showed a lot of these players' addresses necessarily. So a lot of people would just send them to like the team offices. But if it
Yep.
went to the team office, a lot of time it would just go straight to a secretary who would go ahead and just. But that was their main job, was just like corresponding back with these letters and then just going ahead and signing a lot of these things themselves. And so, yeah, that's definitely something to really watch out for and learn. And yeah, it really makes these numbers even lower than what you expect from a lot of these guys that played in that era.
Right. I know the pop reports on it's just very different than 86 Fleer. Number one, you don't really deal with the secretarial as much. There's a
Mhm.
lot of in person, and you did some TTM, but you could kind of find where they, like their addresses and things like that. Um, that that's one big issue, and yeah, like I said, the other is, it's just like, yeah, finding what you think is an authentic signature or not, and like the pop reports are so low. Like in '86, the lowest pop report might be like 9 or something like that for and rising. For some of these 69s, it's like 2,
Yeah,
3, 1. I mean, a lot of some of them are slabbed in like blue flips or a trading card or something like that, and it's skewed.
right.
Um, but I would say, there's it's like almost a tenth the population of like 86 in terms of signatures, and it's probably 10 times the difficulty, to be honest. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And something that I've been bringing up a lot lately is like there are some in these sets, like 69 Tops and 61 Fleer, that aren't necessarily rare, or at least not near as rare as a lot of the ones that, like you've already discussed with 69 Tops, but they fit a lot of collections now because there are a lot of people out there that are not just necessarily going out and getting 69 Top sets, but getting all of the rookie Hall of Famers from 69 Tops because they want all the signed Hall of Fame rookies that they can possibly get, or top 50 or top 75 NBA players, their rookie autographs, and 69 obviously has a lot, as well as 86 Fleer, and then so with 69 Tops, I mean, there are quite a few John Havliceks, but his go for a lot of money because there are a lot of collectors that want a John Havlicek, and there still aren't probably the numbers of Havlicek autos for all the people that are wanting a 69 Tops John Havlicek, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a cool set. There's just
Yeah.
so many Hall of Famers. It's just like chock full of them. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, same's true for 61 Fleer. And so,
Yep.
it's great that a lot of people are going after them at the same time. It's like, it makes um like the Casey Jones 61 Fleer. I mean, there's a good amount of them. There's like probably over 25, 30 of them that exist out there, but they pretty regularly go for around four figures. Because he's a Hall of Famer and it's his rookie, and it fits a lot of people's collections. Trying to get that Casey Jones 61 Fleer, and that's just one of like 22 Hall of Fame rookies in the 61 Fleer set. So it makes a lot of those cards pretty pricey, even if they're not necessarily that rare.
Right. And this is just our little vintage world, too. I mean, there's a bigger thing happening here where, all these 15-year-olds are going to these card shows and, they're seeing vintage in the boxes. They're seeing, this new, what I call the scratch ticket era of like, the parallels and prisms and stuff like that. But I have a feeling the entire hobby is going to be, you know, part of this like new wave of interest almost, especially with Fanatics coming in.
Mhm.
And like I said, you can't print more of these. You can't get more of these signed, at least for the deceased players. It's a finite supply with a hobby that could 10x, and there will be a vintage part of that hobby. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, so far the ones that you have received in the 69 top set, what were some of the more interesting ones, or difficult ones to get outside the ones that you're still trying to collect?
Oh man, yeah, I've gotten lucky with a few. Like Rick Edelman's really tough,
Hmm.
and I just got lucky with him. Um, TTM, which is great. That's at PSA right now. Hopefully it passes. I mean, that's the game. Oh, that's the other problem with some of these. Um, I think like I really like my Kareem a lot. I did a lot of crackouts to finally get like a well graded Kareem, like because that's kind of like a feature of the set.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a 5'10" or a 5'9" Kareem, which I just love. Um, and then, like some of them that can be tough, like Ray Scott, I got him TTM, which is great. Um, and then, I've had to buy a decent amount of them because they're just not here anymore. But um, yeah, it's been fun.
Well, fantastic. So you're still doing the 69 tops, obviously. What are some other things that you've been kind of also collecting? Anything else that you're passionate about or doing as like a side project besides that set currently?
Yeah, I've got some MJ stuff. You've probably seen on my Instagram. I've got both his 88s signed by him in Blue Sharpie, which is awesome. Um, and um, I one of the funnier sets that I'm trying to get signed is the Goonies set from 1985 because I'm just a child of the 80s and love that movie. And it's harder than you think. It's a pretty big set, and they're on multiple cards, and some of them are big time now. Like Josh Brolin is an A-list
Mm-hmm.
actor. You have to pay a pretty significant fee to get him to sign. Chunk is impossible because he's doing great. He runs like a law firm for celebrities out there, and everything you send is just return to sender. So hopefully someday he actually signs some cards again. He's hard. Corey Feldman's hard too. He's kind of an interesting guy, and like he's always touring and stuff like that. So that's actually harder than you think, but it's a nice little break. I think I know I'll finish 69 eventually. So I'm probably going to flirt a little bit with 61. Like I've already written to all the living players because that's just like low hanging fruit and pretty easy. And I think I've gotten all of them back, like their inaction, and like it just occurred to me like Jerry West is just such an iconic player. I might as well just have him sign his 61 cards. He does signings. Why not? You know, I got Kuzi obviously because I'm a Celtics fan, and I'll probably get Russell and stuff like that. But I don't know if I'm in the mood to put that set together because the difficulty's even up. Like 69, it's another 8 years of aging, and the scarcity is just it's just up another notch, and the cost is also up another notch, and it just doesn't seem fun. I think we'll see.
I honestly don't know if I'll ever complete the 61 Fleer because you truly have some cards in that set that there probably are like less than 5 that is known to exist. There's only like 2 Carl Bronze that I've ever seen ever. And like 2 Walter Dukes as well. And he has 2 cards in that set. He's very, I honestly think there may only be like 5 or so that exist of his sign out there in the world, so it gets very, very scarce numbers when you talk about that set for sure. So I don't know, maybe I picked the wrong set. No, I'm kidding. I also noticed you started dabbling in 2012 Prism, getting some of those signed. Do you still have that, or is that just something you did just for fun?
I looked at that. Yeah, I do. So my rationale there is 2012 Prism, I think, is like the next 86 Fleer.
Right.
Like when my son is my age or something like that, it was relatively low production compared to the madness nowadays.
Right.
It's the first Prism set. It's pretty iconic and different, like the metallic cards. It features, it's just, again, chock full of Hall of Famers from Kobe to LeBron to Anthony Davis. It's just like another generation. The problem with that set,
double rookie class, all that stuff.
Exactly, double rookie class. So you've got like just tons, like Lillard and Butler and Kawhi and just everybody. And they even had on-card autos for that set, which is pretty cool. So even the deceased players like Kobe, if you can't find an on-card auto, like you can at least fall back on that. Like you could pull it off. But the size of that set, it's almost 300 cards. And it's literally impossible because of all the retro cards that you're just not going to get like a Paul Reason, like it's just, it doesn't exist, right? Like no one got that card signed by him. So I was like, this would be kind of fun, and then I just said, forget it, I'm not touching this for a while. And the other problem is it's in a weird zone where like the players aren't quite retired or they're overseas. And they're just not ready to like settle down and sign like 100 cards for people like coming to their house, like they're still working, or they're announcers or like something like that. I think in 5 or 10 more years, it's probably a better time to start something like that. And you'd really have to keep it to like the non-retro cards, and have the option of falling back on the auto inserts if you can't get an on card, especially for Kobe. I don't even know if an on card Kobe exists for that.
Yeah, or even a LeBron, obviously, because
somewhere, somehow, somebody might have gotten it signed by him. And again, he could always do a signing for whatever, but probably not.
Yeah. I mean, certainly an interesting one to contemplate because out of all the modern sets, like I've thought about that quite a bit. Of like, are there sets that would be? What are the interesting sets to go after potentially past 1990? When it comes to trying to find complete or near complete autograph sets of, and you might think of like 96 Topps, 2012 Panini Prism would definitely probably rank pretty high on the list in terms of being iconic, being just real interesting, having that, having a ton of rookies, a ton of Hall of Famers, all those things, and that would make it kind of interesting. But you're right, it would probably be impossible unless you put quite a few qualifiers on it. And like even something like I know Kawhi doesn't sign, and there's just a bunch of people that just don't sign still. Like Russell Westbrook doesn't really sign. Maybe they'll change their mind in the future at some point, but you just don't know. And so, yeah.
Plus, the cards are hard to sign in general. I mean, if you start mailing these out to people, they're going to be awful signatures. You have to like put an eraser to that thing and ruin the card essentially to get a good signature on that prism because it's just so glossy.
Yeah, you really have to prep them, definitely. And the same is true for like, I know there are people who are interested in getting the 96 Topps Chrome or Topps Chrome Refractor signed. And it's a great theory, but yeah, you have to prep all those cards and really just get really lucky. And I just don't see how.
Sounds miserable.
Yeah, probably for the most part. But
I mean, you could do like the Hall of Famers or something. Then that might be okay, right? So like if you think about 10 years from now, everybody's obsessed with Hall of Famers from 61, 69, 86.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be the same thing with 2012. They're going to want all the Hall of Famers signed. So you could, if you narrow it that way, I could see how it would be fun. And a lot of them are easy. You could just buy them because they, like I said, they have auto inserts on card. So you could do that too.
Yeah, a few of them. I don't think they did it for all of them, obviously, but
no. It was like AD, Kobe, LeBron. Yeah, not everybody, but not Kawhi.
Oh man, yeah. Well, yeah. So like I said, I've thought about that recently of like what would be maybe some interesting modern sets down the road. Yeah, 10, 20 years from now that people would be very interested in, and that could potentially be one. But yeah, I don't know.
You're better off buying a box of those and just sitting on it.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go.
So yeah, is there anything else you wanted to mention? Have we hit on pretty much everything that you've been kind of going for recently, or did we hit on everything that you wanted to talk about with the sets that you've been collecting so far?
Yeah, I'll just close it out with requests. If anybody has deceased 86 Fleer, I'll always take a look in case it's an upgrade. I kind of want everything in blue Sharpie at some point, or your card might be graded better than mine, and I'm happy to like trade mine plus another card or mine and money. So I'd love to hear from you. And then with 69 Topps, you can go to my Instagram. It's Boston Card Hunter. My list is there. But really, if you have any 69 Topps, I'll take a look because who knows, it might be better than what I have signed already.
Yep. And then I also know you're going to be doing a podcast here this winter, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to launch it in August. It's called Sports Card Madness, and it's going to be a little bit crazy. Not like your typical sports card podcast. We're going to like debate things. It might be explicit. I'm lining up some ex-NBA players to talk about like how they're handling autographs through the mail, stuff like that. Everything from that to card promoters and dealers, or like a 15-year-old's perspective on this madness that we're experiencing now with like the hobby. So it's going to be cool. I'll probably kick it off within a couple of weeks and have it up and running.
That sounds fantastic. And we are coming up here pretty quickly on the National too, obviously. Are you going to the National?
I am not this year. It takes a lot to get me to leave Cape Cod in the summer. But if this was in September or April, it would be just so much more compelling for me. But I do have to go just for the experience. I think you can probably put me down for next year. But I've got bounties out. If anybody's going to the National, I will pay you well to find cards I need, especially in the 69 set. So yeah, I'll live vicariously through everybody going.
I will as well. I really was hoping I'd get to go this year, but it just didn't really work out. So yeah, I'll be living vicariously through a lot of people and and talk to people when they come back and hear all about it. But yeah, maybe next year. That's also my hope.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you once again for coming on and doing this interview, Nick. I really appreciate it. And once again, his Instagram is Boston Card Hunter. You can find him there and take a look at all of his amazing signed venture stuff that he's collected so far. Yeah, it was a real pleasure talking to you, Nick. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. This was a blast.
Absolutely. Have a good day.